I am Andrew Harper, 32 years old, a musician living in Seattle. My life is like an unfinished piece of music filled with highs and lows but never quite complete. I grew up in a middle-class suburban home where my parents, James and Linda, always had sky-high expectations. For them, success meant a stable job, a hefty bank account, and a respected position in society. But for me, all I wanted was to play music. My old worn-out guitar was my companion, the place where I poured my dreams my family could never understand. My parents often compared me to David, my younger brother. David, 29, is a shining star in the finance industry. He always knew how to please everyone, earning approving nods from Dad and proud looks from Mom. I don't blame David, he's a good guy, really. But every time I heard Mom say, "Why can't you be more like David?" it felt like my heart was being squeezed. I love music, love the melodies that tell my story, but to my family it's just a pointless hobby. My girlfriend's name is Sarah. She's the bright spot in my life. She's 30, an accountant, living a neat and stable life. Sarah isn't the dreamy type, but she always listens to me, always smiles when I play a new song. "Andrew, you'll make it," she often says, and I believe her. Sarah is the only one who makes me feel like I'm not lost. We've been together for 2 years, and even though my life isn't easy, gigs are scarce, money is tight, she's still there holding my hand. Seattle is a beautiful city, but for me it's full of pressure. I rent a small apartment where the sound of my guitar fills the nights, mingling with the noise of traffic outside. My music career is a struggle. Small bars pay me a few bucks per gig, and record labels don't even bother replying to my emails. Some nights I sit alone, wondering if I'm chasing a dream that doesn't exist. But then Sarah will call, her voice soft over the phone, and I find a reason to keep going. I remember one evening after finishing a gig at a rundown bar. There were only a handful of scattered patrons, and the bar owner paid me $50, less than the cost of gas. I came home exhausted, but Sarah was there, carrying a pizza box and a smile. "You played great," she said, though I knew she was just trying to comfort me. We sat on the couch eating pizza, and I told her about my dream. One day I'd stand on a big stage playing music for thousands of people. Sarah held my hand, her eyes sparkling. "I believe in you, Andrew." In that moment, I felt like I could conquer the world. But deep down, I know things aren't that simple. My parents never stop reminding me that I'm wasting my time. "You're 32, Andrew," my dad said during a family dinner. "It's time you got a real job." My mom was gentler, but her words cut deeper. "Look at David. He knows how to plan for the future." I stayed silent, swallowing the pain along with a bite of steak. David sat across from me, trying to change the subject, but I knew he felt the pressure too. He's the family's pride, while I'm just an ellipsis. Thanksgiving is approaching, and I've decided to bring Sarah home to meet my family. I want them to see that I'm doing okay, that I have an amazing woman by my side. I imagine Mom smiling, Dad nodding, and maybe just once them being proud of me. But I don't know that this trip will change everything. On Thanksgiving, my parents' house in the Seattle suburbs was filled with the aroma of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie. I held Sarah's hand as we walked in, my heart brimming with hope. Sarah wore a light blue dress, her hair tied up, her smile radiant. "Don't worry, Andrew," she whispered as we stood at the door. "They'll like me." I squeezed her hand, trying to believe everything would be okay. Dinner started off cheerfully. David talked about his job, million-dollar deals, and business trips to New York. My dad nodded approvingly, my mom beamed. Sarah joined the conversation, asking David about the finance industry with genuine curiosity. I sat there trying to chime in, but every word I said seemed to be ignored. "Andrew, are you still playing guitar?" my mom asked, but her tone sounded like she was inquiring about a childish hobby. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'm still trying." Sarah placed her hand on mine under the table, a small gesture of comfort. After dinner, I joined Dad and David in the living room to watch TV. Sarah and my mom stayed in the kitchen cleaning up and washing dishes. I thought everything was fine until I passed by the kitchen to grab more wine. The door was slightly ajar, and I heard my mom's voice, low but clear. "Sarah, you're a sweet girl," she said. "But do you really think you're right for Andrew? I mean, Andrew's a good boy, but he doesn't have a clear future." My heart clenched. I stood frozen, barely breathing, listening to every word. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then she spoke, her voice hesitant. "I understand what you mean. Andrew's very passionate, but sometimes I worry." My mom cut in, her voice as sweet as honey. "David's different. He's smart, successful, and he knows how to take care of a woman. A girl like you deserves someone like David. He'd give you a better life. Don't worry about Andrew. He'll be fine." I felt the blood rush to my head. I wanted to barge in, to shout, but my feet were glued to the floor. Sarah didn't say anything else, just murmured vaguely. I turned away, my heart pounding, trying to stay calm. For the rest of the evening I laughed and talked as if nothing had happened. But a storm was raging in my mind. Sarah still held my hand, still smiled at me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting. In the days following Thanksgiving, Sarah started acting differently. She canceled one date, citing a busy work schedule, then another because she was tired. She texted less, and when we did meet, she kept mentioning David. "Did you know David just got promoted?" she said, her eyes lighting up. "He's really talented." I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just innocent admiration. But then, one evening I saw her with David. I was on my way to Sarah's favorite coffee shop to surprise her. Through the window, I saw them sitting across from each other, laughing and talking intimately. Sarah touched David's hand and he smiled, a smile I'd never seen on my brother's face. I stood there under the streetlight, feeling like the world was crumbling. I didn't go in, didn't confront them. I just turned around, walked back to my apartment, my guitar on my back, feeling heavier than ever, as if it carried all my pain. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my room playing sorrowful melodies, trying to make sense of what was happening. Sarah, the woman I loved, the one I trusted, was wavering. And my family, the people who were supposed to support me, were the ones pushing her away. I felt lonelier than ever, but deep inside, a fire began to burn. I wouldn't let them define me. I would prove I was worthy. I decided to leave Seattle for a place that held more promise. But before I left, I wanted to confront my parents one last time. On a rainy afternoon, I went to their house, my heart heavy. Dad was sitting in his armchair reading the newspaper. Mom was tidying up in the kitchen. "I need to talk," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. I told them what I'd overheard on Thanksgiving, how they'd pushed Sarah toward David. I waited for an apology, a hint of remorse, but my dad only frowned. "Andrew, we just want what's best for the girl, and honestly, David is the better choice." My mom nodded, her eyes cold. "You need to grow up, Andrew. Music isn't a future." I felt my heart shatter, but I didn't cry. I just nodded, turned, and walked out of that house. The rain soaked my jacket, but I didn't care. My resolve to leave Seattle was stronger than ever. This place was full of painful memories I wanted to bury. I decided to move to Austin, Texas. I'd heard it was a music paradise, a place where artists like me could find opportunities. With my guitar, a suitcase of clothes, and $2,000 in savings, I boarded a bus, leaving Seattle behind. As the bus rolled forward, I looked out the window, watching the buildings fade into the rain. I wasn't sure if I was running away or running towards something, but I knew I had to go. Austin greeted me with sweltering heat and the sound of blues music spilling from the streets. I felt the vibrancy here, but it also overwhelmed me. I didn't know anyone, had no connections, nothing but a vague determination. I told myself, I'll make it. I have to make it. I rented a small apartment. It was a musty room with stained walls and a bed that was just an old mattress. The sound of insects outside the window kept me company every night. I had no money to buy new things, no one to share the space with. But I didn't complain. This was my chance to start over. Finding work in Austin was harder than I expected. I went from one bar to another club carrying my demo and a sliver of hope. "We don't need new people," they'd say. Or worse, "What experience do you have?" I wanted to shout that I'd lived for music my whole life, but I just bowed my head, thanked them, and walked out. Each rejection made me feel smaller, but I didn't give up. My savings dwindled quickly. Some days I survived on dry bread and tap water. I checked my phone, hoping for a text from Sarah, a call from Mom. But there was nothing. A while later, I heard that Sarah and David had gotten married. My parents posted pictures of them online, beaming at the wedding. No one asked how I was doing in Texas. No one invited me to the wedding, not even my parents or my brother. It was as if the whole world had forgotten I existed, like I'd been invisible for all 32 years of my life. I sat in my room staring at my guitar, the loneliness pressing on my chest like a boulder. I used to think family was a place to return to, but now I had nothing. One day, when I was close to despair, I saw a job posting at a coffee shop. Soundwave Studio needed an assistant, no experience required. I went straight there, my heart pounding. The manager, Hank, an old man with silver hair, looked at me. "What do you know about music?" he asked. I told him about my gigs in Seattle, about the dream I carried with me. Hank nodded. "Start tomorrow. Pays low, don't complain." The studio job was a string of long days. I mopped floors, organized equipment, made coffee, but I didn't complain. Hearing artists record made me feel alive again. Then one afternoon she walked in, Elizabeth. I vaguely recognized her, David's ex-girlfriend. I remembered a dinner years ago when David brought her home. She was radiant, talking about music, but my mom gave her a cold look and later said, "She's not good enough for you, David." I saw Elizabeth bow her head, hiding her pain. Today we met with the same pain caused by David. She approached, her brown hair messy, wearing an old t-shirt, carrying a stack of papers. "Hank, I need a studio ASAP," she said. Then she looked at me and froze. "Are you Andrew, David's brother?" I nodded, surprised. "You remember me?" She gave a sad smile. "Hard to forget that dinner. Your mom wasn't exactly fond of me." Hank introduced us. "Andrew, this is Elizabeth, music producer. Don't tick her off." Elizabeth told Hank we were acquaintances, then she looked at me, her eyes like those of someone finding a familiar face in a storm. Elizabeth and I quickly found common ground. We both loved music, both had been turned away by my family. At the studio, she taught me how to mix tracks, how to listen to every detail. "Music is emotion, Andrew," she said. "If you can't feel it, you can't do it." I admired her, not just her talent, but her resilience after what my family had done to her. During long nights at the studio, we shared everything. I told her about Seattle, about Sarah, about how my parents only cared about David and his wedding. "They don't call. Don't ask how I'm doing," I said, my voice bitter. Elizabeth nodded. "I get it. Your mom once told me I wasn't good enough for David, that I'd drag him down." She gave a sad laugh. "But I'm still here doing what I love." I looked at her and saw myself, someone rejected but unwilling to give up. We found solace in music. Once, after a failed recording session, Elizabeth angrily threw papers on the table. I made coffee, played an old blues track, and we sat there laughing about our mistakes. "You're not bad, Andrew," she said. "You just need to believe in yourself more." Her words were a ray of light in my darkness. We started dreaming big. Elizabeth wanted to produce an album for Mia, a young artist whose voice silenced the entire studio. But the project lacked funding, and investors weren't interested. We worked tirelessly from early morning to midnight, surviving on coffee and faith. I still checked my phone, hoping for a text from Mom, a word from Sarah. But there was nothing. My parents were busy boasting about David online, about his and Sarah's new house. I didn't exist in their world. One evening, when the studio was empty, Elizabeth sat next to me looking at a pile of recordings. "Do you ever want revenge?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, I just want to prove them wrong." She smiled, touching my shoulder. Me too. We'll make it, Andrew. In that moment, I knew she wasn't just a colleague. She was someone who understood me, someone who made me want to be the best version of myself. Our friendship deepened through the struggles. We faced financial pressures, failed recording sessions, and fierce competition together. Elizabeth told me about her dreams. One day, she wanted to build a place for abandoned artists like us. I shared my dream, standing on a big stage, playing music for thousands. We weren't just friends. We were two wounded souls who found each other in music. The bond between me and Elizabeth grew quietly, not with fanfare, but like a slow melody, each note sinking into our hearts. One night, after finishing a recording for Mia, we sat on the studio's rooftop, gazing at the stars. "Andrew," Elizabeth said softly, "you're the first person who's made me feel like I'm enough." I looked at her, my heart pounding. "You're the one who makes me want to keep living, Elizabeth." I kissed her. That kiss was real, as if it erased all our pain. We fell in love, but we didn't rush. We were still friends, colleagues, sharing dreams and pressures. Elizabeth proposed a bold idea, starting a music production company focused on independent artists overlooked by major labels. "We can change this industry," she said, her eyes blazing with passion. I agreed, even though I knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. We named the company Underdog Music. Our first office was just a tiny corner in Hank's studio, with 2 old desks and a rickety computer. We did everything, scouting artists, seeking funding, promoting. But money was a constant issue. Some months we couldn't cover rent. Elizabeth sold her old car. I took side gigs at bars. Failures came one after another. A major project fell through when an investor pulled out. An artist left us for a bigger label's promise. Some nights Elizabeth sat alone, her eyes red. "What if we're wrong?" she asked. I took her hand. "We're not wrong. We just need time." Our love was the fire that kept us going. Every morning Elizabeth made coffee, smiling at me. Every night we played music, tossing around crazy ideas. She was the reason I didn't give up, and I knew I was the reason she persevered. I still thought of Sarah, of my parents, but the pain had faded. They were no longer the center of my life. Now Elizabeth was my reason for living. Slowly, Underdog Music made progress. Mia's album caught the attention of a radio station. Another artist cracked the indie charts. We started gaining a small reputation. Elizabeth and I weren't just building a company, we were building a life where we belonged to each other. We knew that though the past had hurt us, it had also brought us together. Every morning I woke up next to Elizabeth, the smell of coffee wafting from our small Austin kitchen. She stood there, hair tied up, softly humming a blues tune. I smiled, feeling luckier than ever. Underdog Music, our dream, was growing day by day, but the path to success was far from easy. The first months with Underdog Music were a battle. We worked non-stop from dawn to midnight in the cramped office at Soundwave Studio. Mia's album, Our Labor of Love, was finally complete, but getting it to the public was a challenge. We sent recordings to radio stations, music platforms, even knocked on doors of Austin bars. Most rejected us. "Too new," they said. "Not commercial enough." Some nights, Elizabeth and I sat across from each other, staring at a bank account nearing zero, wondering if we were chasing a pipe dream. But then, a local radio station noticed Mia. They played her lead single, Broken Wings, and overnight our phones wouldn't stop ringing. Listeners requested the song relentlessly. Streaming platforms added Broken Wings to their playlists. Mia, the young girl who once trembled in the studio, became a sensation. A small article in the Austin Chronicle called her Indie's new gem, and Underdog Music was mentioned as quiet pioneers. Doors began to open. Independent artists sought us out, young, talented people ignored by major labels. We signed a folk band, a street rapper, and a jazz singer with a voice like smoke. Each project was a gamble, but Elizabeth and I believed in them just as we believed in each other. We worked like mad, producing, promoting, even designing album covers to save costs. Some days I fell asleep at my desk. Elizabeth typed until her hands shook. But we didn't stop. A year later, Underdog Music moved from the corner of Hank's studio to our own office. Still small, but ours. We hung old artist posters on the walls and placed my guitar in the corner as a reminder of our journey. A national music magazine wrote about us, calling Underdog Music a fresh breeze in the industry. They interviewed Elizabeth and me, asking about our secret to success. Elizabeth laughed, squeezing my hand under the table. "We just do what we love with people we believe in," she said. I nodded, but inside I knew the truth. Our success was built on scars, on rejections, on lonely Texas nights when no one checked on me. We expanded to other cities, Dallas, Nashville, even Los Angeles. Underdog Music signed dozens of artists, and their albums climbed the indie charts. A song we produced was nominated for a Grammy in the Best New Artist category. On the night of the nomination announcement, Elizabeth and I sat in our apartment, hugging and shouting like kids. "We did it, Andrew!" she cheered, her eyes sparkling. I kissed her, feeling that every past hardship was worth it. But success didn't erase the past. I still thought about Sarah, my parents, David. I no longer checked my phone waiting for their messages, but I knew they were living their lives in Seattle. Part of me wanted them to see me now, not to boast, but to show them I'd overcome what they thought I couldn't. Elizabeth sensed it. "One day we'll face them," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Not for revenge, but for closure." I nodded, knowing she was right. Underdog Music is now a name that carries weight. We moved to a larger headquarters with modern studios and a small, dedicated team. The media praises us for our humane approach, for giving overlooked artists a chance. But for me, the greatest success is Elizabeth, the woman who stood by me through every struggle, who made me believe I was worthy of love, of dreaming. One morning, as Elizabeth and I were preparing for a major music event in Austin, a concert showcasing our new artists, Elizabeth proposed a bold idea. "We should invite your family," she said, looking straight into my eyes. "David, Sarah, your parents. Not for revenge, but to close the past." I was stunned. The thought of facing them made my heart race, but I knew she was right. I'd been running for too long. If I wanted to truly move forward, I needed to look straight at the people who had hurt me. I nodded, though my heart was heavy with anxiety. Elizabeth took my hand. "We'll do this together, Andrew." I sent invitations to my parents, David and Sarah, along with a brief note. "Underdog Music is hosting a music event in Austin. I hope you can come." I didn't expect a reply, didn't hope they'd show up. But a week later, Mom called. "Andrew," she said, her voice hesitant, "we'll be there. David and Sarah, too." I hung up, feeling both relieved and tense. They were coming, and I wasn't sure if I was ready. The day of the event arrived like a gust of wind. The Austin Grand Theater was awash in lights and music. Hundreds of audience members, journalists, and sponsors filled the venue. Elizabeth and I stood backstage, checking everything. She wore a simple black dress, her hair loose, beautiful like a melody. "You okay?" she asked, touching my arm. I nodded, though my heart was pounding. "As long as I have you, I'm okay." The concert began. Mia took the stage first, her voice ringing out, captivating the crowd. Other artists followed, each bringing a story, a dream that Underdog Music had helped make real. I stood in the wings, watching the audience applaud, and felt proud. This was my world, the world Elizabeth and I had built from broken pieces. Then I saw them. My parents, David and Sarah, seated in the guest section. Dad was in a suit. Mom wore pearl earrings, but their eyes couldn't hide their surprise. David, in business attire, looked more tired than I remembered. Sarah sat beside him, her red dress striking, but her smile was forced. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Elizabeth squeezed my hand. "We've got this," she whispered. After the performances, Elizabeth and I stepped onto the stage to speak. The crowd cheered as we appeared. I looked down and saw my parents, David and Sarah. Their eyes met mine, and for a moment I felt like the 32-year-old boy they'd once rejected. But then I looked at Elizabeth, and I knew I wasn't that person anymore. Underdog Music isn't just a company, I said, my voice clear. It's a home for those who've been discarded, told they're not good enough. We're here to prove them wrong. Elizabeth continued, sharing our journey, how we turned dreams into reality. The crowd applauded, but I only looked at my family. Dad lowered his head. Mom pursed her lips. David and Sarah stayed silent. After the event, they approached us in the reception area. Mom spoke first, her voice trembling. Andrew, you did so well. Dad nodded, but his eyes avoided mine. David stepped forward, extending his hand. Congratulations, bro, he said, but his voice lacked energy. Sarah stood behind, silent, looking at me with eyes I couldn't read. Then Mom turned to Elizabeth, hesitating. You're a talented young woman. I may have been wrong about you. Elizabeth smiled but didn't respond. I knew she didn't need that apology. She'd moved past it, just as I had. David spoke to me quietly, his voice strained. My company's in trouble, Andrew. If you could help. I cut him off. David, I built everything from nothing. You can too. I wasn't angry, wasn't bitter. I just wanted closure. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice soft. I'm sorry, Andrew. I was wrong. I looked at her, remembering the days we were happy. I forgive you, I said, but I don't need you anymore. She lowered her head, and I knew that was the last time we'd speak. As they left, Elizabeth and I stood under the stage lights, watching the theater empty. You okay? She asked. I pulled her into my arms, feeling lighter. I'm okay now, I said. The past was no longer a burden. I had faced it, and I had won. In the days following the event, Underdog Music continued to grow. But the past didn't let go easily. One morning, as Elizabeth and I were editing a track in the studio, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. I hesitated but answered. Andrew, her voice trembled, lacking its usual confidence. David, he's in big trouble. His company is on the verge of bankruptcy. He and Sarah are fighting constantly. Can you help your brother? I fell silent, feeling as if I were being pulled back to those days in Seattle when Mom only talked about David, when she told me to be realistic. I thought of David at the concert, his tired eyes, and Sarah with her forced smile. I'd heard from an old friend that their marriage was fracturing. Sarah was no longer the cheerful girl I once loved. She complained about financial pressures, about David's unfulfilled expectations, and David, once a finance star, was now struggling to keep his company afloat after a failed deal. Part of me felt sorry for them, but a larger part was just exhausted. Mom, I said, my voice calm but firm, I can't help. David has to figure it out himself. After everything this family has done, I just want to live for me. Mom hesitated, then said softly, You've changed, Andrew. I gave a sad smile. No, Mom. I've just learned to love myself. I hung up, feeling a pang of heartache but also relief. I didn't want to be entangled with them anymore. They'd chosen their path, and so had I. Elizabeth looked at me with concern. Everything okay? I told her about the call. She took my hand, non-judgmental. You did the right thing, she said. We don't owe them anything. I kissed her forehead, knowing she was all I needed. Our life, mine and Elizabeth's, was now a new song full of bright notes. We moved into a larger apartment in Austin with a balcony overlooking the city. Every evening we sat there playing guitar, singing unfinished songs and laughing about wild ideas for Underdog Music. I no longer thought much about Sarah, David, or my parents. I knew they were living their lives with their own struggles and fractures. Once I stumbled across a post from Mom online boasting about a family vacation, but her smile looked forced. David and Sarah weren't in the photos. I didn't feel joy at that, but I didn't feel sadness either. They were no longer part of my story. Sometimes I thought of Seattle, of the nights playing music in my small apartment, of the times Sarah believed in me. But those memories no longer hurt. They were part of me, but they didn't define me. I'd grown not through my family's validation, but through failures, lonely nights in Texas, and Elizabeth's love. She was the one who taught me that happiness isn't about others' acceptance, but about accepting yourself. One evening, Elizabeth and I sat on the balcony, the moonlight illuminating the city. She rested her head on my shoulder, softly singing a song we'd written together. "Did you ever think we'd make it this far?" she asked. I shook my head, smiling. "No, but I know every hurt was worth it because it led me to you." She kissed me and I felt my heart overflow. I no longer needed my family's approval. I didn't need Sarah or David to see me differently. I had Elizabeth underdog music and dreams coming true. I had myself, a stronger, more peaceful and happier version than ever before. My life was now a song, imperfect but mine, and I would play it to the very last note,